So welcome everyone, and please make sure that you're typing in your name and where you're from, and also if you would like to maybe put in a little bit of, are you an English teacher like me? Because I've been teaching English for many, many years. You could say I've been an English teacher for 15 years. That's right. I have traveled quite a lot from Europe, Eastern Europe, and all over the world. So it's really nice to see some people from places that I've been to as well. So it's really nice. Kindergarten English teacher. Wow, in Jordan for 10 years. That's wonderful. I'm sure you're kindergarten. Wow, I couldn't imagine trying to teach kindergarten. Um, but absolutely. Oh, English teaching to adults. That's just wonderful. 30 years as an English teacher. Fantastic. Wow. So it's not, it seems like we're all here as equals, really. Any one of you, I'm sure, would be very happy to give a talk about their experiences and their approaches to English teaching. But for today, it's going to be me, and we're all going to be talking about task-based learning. Let me just spotlight myself for everyone. So thank you all very, very much for coming, English University students in Turkey. Oh, yes, I love Turkey. I've been there as well. It's all these wonderful places that I've been to. No, I've also been to France as well. English teacher for 5 years. Wonderful. Hello from Greece. Sometimes, oh, can we get more than 100 people in today? That would be lovely. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Mark Burgess. I'm the senior teacher here at Education First, and I've been an English teacher for more than 15 years. I have my kind of certificate and diploma in English language teaching. Some of you who might have taught internationally will know that as the Delta, and I've been working a lot in the ESL world, which is English as a secondary language, especially like schools when English teaching starts after classes as extracurricular activities, moving up to English teaching for adults, which is what my specialty is in. I also work with a lot of teachers here at our school. I'm based in Manchester. That's right. And Manchester is where I'm teaching at Manchester Education First. And I work with a lot of the teachers here. And currently, I've been doing quite a few observations and formal observations of the teachers here at EF Education First. Right? Or as I like to say, English first. But, you know, that's not really here or there. Today, we are going to be talking about task-based learning or task-based language teaching. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to you today about this approach to English language teaching, why I really enjoy using it, and how the approach works and how we can incorporate it into our language learning, you know, perhaps in the future, or perhaps in classes where we feel that, you know, we would like to become better at language teaching. Let me see if I can find this one. No? Oh, let me just move up a bit. There we are. There we go. My screen is now sharing. Fantastic. So let me just bring up the chat box and we can begin. Make sure I can see the chat box at all times. There it is. Hello, Alex. Hello, everyone. Yes, as you come in, please make sure you're writing your name and where you're from in the chat box, and we can really begin. Fantastic. Okay. So I don't want to keep us too long, and there's a lot to talk about. So we shall begin with a few questions that I would like to ask you to put in the chat box. So here we go. Right, so a little bit of a chat box debate. Okay, do you agree? Here we go. Activities which involve real communication are essential for language learning. We've got a lot of yeses in the class. Real communication, right? This is an idea that's based in something which would be called CLT, or communicative language teaching. It's an idea that it needs to be genuine and real life contexts. And I think essentially that real language communication is essential for language learning. However, right, if you've got a lower level student who cannot communicate well, say, for example, an A1 student or an A21 student, maybe that real communication is very jagged and slow. So maybe a more teacher-led approach might be more important, right? It depends, yes? Of course, we can use body language to facilitate. That's right. And communication, expressing people's thoughts and ideas definitely helps. Here's another one, right? How difficult are mixed ability groups to teach? We've got a very, right? Yeah, they are. Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. Okay, so senior with the kinder. All right, absolutely. Mixed ability groups have always been a big part of language learning because we all hope and we all wish, right, that everyone in our classes has got the right level. But reality is messy. Sometimes we've got weaker students, sometimes we've got stronger students. So there is this difficulty. And today, I hope with task-based learning, we can figure out a way to help mitigate or solve this problem of mixed ability groups that are so difficult for us to teach. Oh yes, it can be very difficult, right? Here's another one. How often do you focus on emergent language in your lessons? Do you say to your students, oh, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. We're talking about this vocabulary, not your vocabulary that you've asked me, right? Right? How many times has a student spoken up and said, oh, well, what about this? And the teacher is sitting there going, that's not part of my lesson plan, right? I've got some language I need to teach you today. Can we stick to this? Right? Yeah. Some students are distracted, right? But then, of course, we've also, with kindergartens, I couldn't imagine, right, how much emergent language just pours out of your students. And yes, however, on the flip side, how far are you going to be detracted or distracted from your lesson plan? Your students might take you off the pathway and into the bushes, into the weeds with new topics, new ideas, new language. Right? Exactly. Limits are always necessary. But what if we take it from an other way? What if instead of coming to classes with a set amount of vocabulary that we want them to teach, and instead we focus on the language that they bring to class and what's relevant for them? Right? How often do you use authentic materials in class? Always. You need a plan B. Always. That's fantastic. I especially love to bring a lot of authentic language into the classroom materials. A lot of the videos that we show our advanced students is always really fun because they sometimes bring it into the class. Authenticity is key. That's right. Absolutely. Authentic language, I think, is wonderful. And then a cheeky little question at the end. Have you used task-based learning in your lessons. I just want to know if you've had this in your class. Not sure? Yes, says Rick. Yes, I have. Okay. Not frequently. Well, hopefully, after today's lecture, we could talk a little bit more. Once we've talked a little bit more about task-based learning, hopefully you could feel a bit more enthusiastic and encouraged to try new approaches in your language lessons. And perhaps you'd like to give task-based language learning or language teaching a go in your classrooms. So let's talk a little bit about task-based learning, right? Task-based learning has been a very important part of language learning in the classroom. And now, this idea stems from or comes from communicative language teaching. Communicative language teaching, or CLT, right? This was pretty much a very big thing in the 70s and in the 80s. And it emphasized that like communication needs to be based on real life contexts that we can use it, right? And so task-based learning emerged out of communicative language teaching and the communicative approach, and it's always been built up on about it, right? These tasks or these activities, are meaningful, right? The idea is that if I have a meaningful task, right, the learners are pushed, are encouraged, are helped to be using language in a very practical, real world context, right? And of course, meaningful language supports the language process. Actually, it has been found, through the evolution of task-based learning, that if you use language in a more meaningful way, retention and memory of the vocabulary, of target language, and this kind of like emergent language is held in students' minds, right? Instead of just working on a list of vocabulary or a grammar point like present perfect simple versus present perfect continuous or progressive. Right? Task-based learning has this idea that we want to prioritize language, right, in our lessons and in our schools here at EF Manchester, in the English-speaking community around them, and the classes and the activities that students do here in Manchester from all over the world, right? And task-based learning puts a key focus onto this genuine reason to read, listen, and discuss inside or outside the task. For example, if I had a task where students needed to rank, their favorite holiday destinations, such as the beach, mountainside, lakes, or a big 5-star hotel, there is this genuine reason to listen to the other students giving their ideas and then basing their own opinions off of what other people have said already. The task encourages, right, students to work together and to communicate together, right? But the real question is, what is a task, right? There are many different tasks, right, that people talk about. Tasks are just anything or everything that people do in their everyday life. There is usually this idea that tasks need some sort of outcome. Like, for example, if I had to join a panel and look at some potential employees for my business, I need to pick a person who I want to hire. So there's a goal oriented activity where students need to achieve something towards the end. Instead of just saying, I need you to do this activity because I want you to practice your present perfect. Right? Many examples of tasks can be job interviews, designing parts of advertising, deciding on which movie to watch. And there's a lot of activities that we'll get to later in the activity. A perfect aspect. Okay. Right. So what is task-based learning trying to fix? Well, in our usual books where we've got some type of grammar instruction or reading task, right? We are going through the stages, right? And then hopefully at the end, we're getting to ask our students to use the grammar in a controlled environment, such as, oh, finish these sentences or underline the correct verb form, or true, false, not given on activity, right? But at the end of the day, um, this is very unrealistic. They're just writing answers to questions, and these questions can be very arbitrary. And what's happening is they are just repetitively using the language instead of putting it into a real world context. And of course, now they're very good. They're very, very good at filling in the missing words. But are they able to communicate well outside the classroom? Exactly. It's this academic versus real life, right? So I would like to kind of look at two types of approaches to English language teaching. Many of you might know the PPP, or presentation, practice, and production stages. And so with PPP, we generally feel that this accuracy over fluency approach, where we want to focus on the language item. We're looking at the form of the item. Can they practice those items, right? So it needs to be correct. The teacher is going around the classroom, ticking off what they've done right and what students might have done wrong, right? This might cause, you've got it, Augustine, this might cause a lot of issues with mixed ability classes, because you've come into class with, say, a B2 book, or a set of language items which you want to bring towards your students. Some as weaker students, some students might be a bit more higher. And then you've got some students who have already finished the task in 2 minutes. And well, now you've got this issue of having to give them further tasks, further activities to help them while you help the lower level students in your class, right? Right. Another reason is a focus on specific language forms, right? Teachers pre-select the language that students learn. And of course, as it was said, teacher-centered. We'll get to the framework quite soon, as some of you have already kind of mentioned the framework. All right. And so how does task-based language learning compare to PPP? Well, obviously in task-based language learning, fluency is vital, right? Because it encourages natural language use. There's also some relevant research to say that it helps promote confidence in our students when they are trying to speak in a real world context. They're achieving their goal by communicating with others instead of mixed levels being a challenge, right? It may be it might help perhaps with mixed ability classes. However, there is still an issue with task-based learning, that there is a challenge at the lower levels, right? Yes, it might be a bit more difficult for them to achieve the task without the hand holding or the scaffolding that we want to give to our learners. Right. Another focus is on the actual language use, right? It's more on the meaning of the language. When we look at a task and two students are talking and there can be some type of communication breakdown, that is when we're able to step in and identify this type of communication breakdown, identifying this gap, and then being able to then afterwards put that focus on that language that caused that communication breakdown in the first place, instead of assuming that this is what language they need to communicate in the first place. It's like putting the cart before the horse. And of course, we all like authentic language. And if I just bring the book to the classroom and I'm asking them to open the book with language that's quite graded, it might not be very authentic. And with authentic language, it does boost, and encourages students to participate more. It's more enjoyable. However, like the previous idea, it can be quite of a challenge for lower language learners. And as was said, it is quite student-centered, which is what you really want. Okay, so I've noticed in the chat box that we've got some students who've already mentioned the type of outline or framework of task-based learning. Well, what does task-based learning look like? Well, let's have a look at the first one. So let's have a look at the procedure. The idea is that we start off with, can anyone tell me how does it normally start in task-based language learning? In the chat box, please. Yes. Brainstorming, warm up. I love a good warm up. Yes. Modeling the pre-text. Augustine knows his stuff. Yeah, very smart. Right, outline. Some people have said it right, and that is the pre-task. Right? Now, role play pre-task. Yes, pre-tasks are something we could definitely do to help, introduce the topic. It is a type of task that brings in knowledge and sets the stage for what students will need to do in the next stage. What is the next stage of task-based learning? In the chat, please. Instructions. Set the scenario. Go. Examples. Engage the student. The hook. I love it. It's actually the task. Right. The task can be broken down into the actual task itself, then planning, and then the report of that task, or student-led feedback. Then, at the end, what comes at the end of this procedure of task-based learning? Anyone from the chat? Evaluation, conclusion, focus on post-task, feedback, 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 feedback. Yes, but what is included in the feedback, right? It is language focus. So it is a very different type of structure to the usual PPP that we have, right? And This is quite a lot of information, so get ready for all this information. 1, 2, 3, poof, right? And here we go. So as a pre-task, this can be done as a type of introduction, or maybe the teacher can give his own model. Say, for example, your task is you want students to tell us to, let's say, plan a trip together with your friends. So what the teacher could do is maybe make a recording of students, of himself, and maybe his peers, some other teachers, and the teacher could make a little bit of an audio of them doing the task and then playing it for the students, right? And this is now where students get the information of what the task is. They might be able to get a model idea of what the task is, and they've got a bit of time to brainstorm. I heard the answer in the question, to brainstorm some ideas and kind of prepare for the task that they need to do, perhaps individually or in groups, right? This is where instructions are very important. So a lot of ICQs, or instruction checking questions, are asked to make sure that there is good idea or good understanding of what they need to do. Then, after the pre-task, is the task cycle. This is when the teacher gives them the opportunity to do the tasks, and you are monitoring, encouraging, making sure you're taking from them language that they've learned. But that's not the end of the task cycle. There's more to do it. Once they've finished, they still need to give their own feedback on how they thought the task was done. Perhaps the students feel that it wasn't done well enough. Maybe they had difficulties with the language that they used. Maybe some ideas that they discovered that if they did it again, how would they do it differently? So they prepare a little report on what they did in the task. And as the teacher, we make sure that we are some sort of advisor and we are helping them prepare for their report. In the report stage, then the students give feedback on how well they think their task went, what mistakes they made, what they did well, what they've learned about the task. And we as the teachers make notes or give brief feedback on how they felt about the tasks. Then, and only then, do we move on to language focus. It starts off with analysis, and obviously the teacher is going to bring up the language up onto the board. Perhaps this is where language has emerged, or emergent language can be put up onto the board, right? Bringing mistakes that the students have made, maybe bringing up useful words or phrases up onto the board. And then, yes, I definitely think that this is for higher, for intermediate students, maybe even lower level students, but we'll get back to that. And making sure that we are focusing on the form of the language that we as teachers feel would help the students to do that activity again better, right? Our language teaching is now based off of what the students have brought to us, right? And then from there, we can give feedback and practice the language, right? So for example, another example. So we talked about that um, they're planning a trip. Let's say students need to plan a trip, or they're going on holiday. They need to prepare what they need to bring, how much money they're going to spend. Maybe it's a task where they've only got a limited amount of money to go on holiday, so they have to think about where they're going to stay, what they're going to do. Right? In the task cycle, they get deep into the activity. They're talking amongst each other about which hotel is the better, or maybe they should go to the hostel. Right? And this is where the teacher is making notes quickly on identifying mistakes, identifying errors, identifying maybe some more meaningful language, which would help them do better in that. Then the students give a report on how they did that task. We had a discussion on a holiday that we were preparing, and we decided to go in there. We talked about how we would buy this and that for activities on holiday we would go there and there. We had some difficulties with the hotel, but we feel that we've achieved the task. Then the teacher can do some analysis, perhaps bring up, maybe there was a need for some modal verbs, for example, that might be a good idea. Oh, we could do this instead. We mustn't go there. That's too expensive, right? And so in a way, the teacher is bringing that language to the board, to the students, so that maybe now, once they finish that and they want to do practice, this is where they could do the task again, using that language that you brought to them, that they needed themselves. So having a look at an actual structure, I've got this, oh, Stephen from South Africa. That's my brother. My brother is also from South Africa. It might be him. We also have a look at, some stages here. I'll probably give this to Teacher Zone. Maybe they can add this to the actual link of the website. And you could perhaps use this task or this lesson plan template for your language learners. But at the end of the day, right, we are doing the pre-task to introduce the language and get students or activate schema, to their language learning. There's the task, and then which moves into the report. And then the language focus at the end, focus on errors, emergent language, different ways of expressing themselves, and then another way to close or to do more practice on the language that was brought into the class, right? Right. And here's another one. I'm definitely happy to bring this into the class, to add this to the website. Right. So let's have a look at the language focus. Right. So focus on form, or what we want to say. I had this little quote here from Light Brown, and she says, at the moment when students know what they want to say, and indeed are trying to say something, right? That's when the means to say it, or like how they can say it more correctly, is offered to them. Instead of giving them the language and hoping they can use it in a very non-realistic way, this goes to show that students really appreciate learning language when it is needed in the moment of speaking, right? We could say, oh, we can give, a nice analogy of this would be, we want to teach someone about perhaps parachutes, right? We could bring it to the classroom and say, here's a parachute, and let me tell you all about parachutes. Students might not pay attention. They might not be really, they might not have too much care. And some of them might say, well, what's the point of learning about parachutes? However, if they're 30,000 feet up in the air and they're about to jump out of the aeroplane, right? When the instructor is talking about parachutes, those students are hyper focused on what it is that they need to know about parachutes. Every single word that the teacher gives is gold. And that's how we see language learning. We want to meet the students where they are in the tasks that they're doing, such as jumping out of an aeroplane. We don't really want to spend time saying, this is what you must know. However, listening to our learners, making sure that they're communicating, and if they do make mistakes, right? What do we do when we make mistakes, right? Right? What do we do when students make mistakes? All right, let's have a look at the chat box. Your student's made perhaps a mistake on past tense, or he's used a modal verb wrong. Correct at the end of the task. We correct them. Oh, I love Anna's answer. Well, obviously we correct them. Right? Ask a question. Delayed correction. Oh, wonderful. I've got some really smart people in the chat. It's wonderful. Yes. Right. Right. There is multiple ways of giving feedback, right? A lot of people know you can do on-the-spot feedback, which is called immediate correction. Or however, some people like to leave it for delayed error feedback. You know, it goes up on the board and we wait. But there's also recasting, right? Where we're not really correcting them, but we're saying, well, you know, the stage was destructed. And it's like, well, you know, really? Uh, was it completely destroyed? And it kind of puts the student on the spot to rethink. Maybe the student has just made a mild error. However, they already know what the correct item is. They just needed another chance to say it correctly. We're very, very quick to correct the students, especially in PPP, where we're hyper-focused on the accuracy of the expression. So we might just say, no, this one here is wrong. Number 2 is wrong. Can you try it again? And so, yes, yeah, that's right. Finger correction. And right, what we really are trying to do is to be a bit more reactive to the language that they're bringing to class, so that we're not necessarily saying that they're wrong, right? But it can also be about how we can expand their language use. Sometimes, especially in my classes, I like to put mistakes up onto the board, but I also like to write sentences which can be quite simplistic up on the board, right? Because now I want everyone to focus on the language analysis and say, like, okay, where's the mistake in the sentence? Students are very happy to point out and say, oh, is it this? Is it that? And you can error correct it on the board, right? This is called delayed feedback. However, it's not about right or wrong sometimes. Maybe there's a simple sentence, and now we're asking the students, how can I upgrade this language? We've used the word good. What's another way of saying good? Because we're overusing the word good, right? You know, it's fantastic, it's brilliant, it's marvelous, right? Maybe the sentences are very short. You know, I went to the park. I saw my friend. Maybe what we can do is make our sentences more complex using compound sentences, and that can bring a bit more enjoyment. The students really enjoy watching their language not just get error corrected, but sometimes, upgraded. It's vital, and they really like. You don't need to necessarily write who made the mistake or who who uses simple sentences. What we really want is for the whole class to learn from what the students have brought to the class. And sometimes, of course, students of mine will be like, oh, that's my mistake. I saw that. That's mine. And they say to their friends, like, oh, that was my mistake. So sometimes it can be quite fun, to use expansion, right? So what kind of different tasks are there in task-based learning, right? Well, there can be quite a few different types. We've got categorizing, opinion gaps, problem solving, sharing personal experiences, creative. And if I had to ask you, right, our group, what type of, if you had to use the task-based language approach, make yourself a task-based language um, uh, lesson plan, for your class that you teach, what type of task would you like to use? Type in the chat box, which ones would you like to use in your lessons? Role playing is very, very important. Problem solving tasks, yes. Yeah. Problem solving tasks in language learning, yes, it could be quite interesting and way of doing it. Say, for example, let's just say, where is it? Yeah, you've got oh, there's a nice one. We've got, like, for example, you have a bad neighbor and you you want to be able to, your neighbors plays loud music in the class upstairs, or he jumps around, bang, bang, bang on in the floor. And you really have to get your students to then perhaps role play the activity. And you now have to look at it from both sides. Maybe the person upstairs works all day long and needs to put on some loud music to help him relax after work. And maybe you wake up, uh, you know, quite quite early to go to work, and you want to go to bed early, and so you have to, the meaningful task of trying to fix or negotiate an outcome and get them to, come to some sort of conclusion, which the students can then put into that report and say, here we had a problem. My neighbor was playing loud music. We had this discussion. We got really deep into it, and we came to a goal, right? Which was he would he would play loud music at the weekends and on Wednesdays, right? When I'm not at home. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, he wouldn't play loud music. And so there's this kind of very interesting way. And you, as the teacher, have gone through it nicely, um, and you're constantly thinking, how can I help engage these ideas to upgrade their language, and give them feedback on the mistakes that they're making? Hmm. Yes. I think, yes, that's a really interesting question. Like, should the teachers take part, or should the teachers? I think that in the pre-task, it's really enjoyable, really fun to have the teacher role play or act out or do the tasks themselves first. You could just show a video of it happening or ideas of it, but you don't want to get too deep into it, because then you might have students saying, oh, excuse me, teacher, what did this word mean? Or what do you mean by, well, what you said? And now what's happening is that you're going into just language teaching, and you're putting up ideas on the board, and the students haven't done any task, right? It's task-based learning. We're putting the task front and center. So you don't want to spend too much time as a teacher in the pre-task doing it. A recording is quite interesting just to get the idea or to set the scene, activate prior schema so they feel. Another one, opinion gaps. Yes. Right. Another one that's really interesting is creative tasks as well. Creative tasks are great, such as um, they're coming up with a poster, perhaps, of a really enjoyable, you know, uh, concert that they went to, why they enjoyed it, who they went with, what they did, and then getting them to put it up on the wall and doing something like a gallery walk, right? Where students need to walk around the classroom and students stand by their project and give feedback or report their task to the other classmates and teachers, and then the teacher can focus on the language that the students brought to the classroom. Guessing games are always fun. Hey? Love guessing games, right? And so there are many different types of tasks. So what I'd like to do is have a little task ourselves. We're going to look at some tasks that are very popular in the ESL world. And for us, I'd like to ask a few questions together. What level is this task more suitable for, right? Number two, what type of language will the students need to do the task well? What type of vocabulary will come up? What type of grammar might they need to use? What type of functional language could they bring to the classroom? Right? And then how could you practice this language? So let's do a little task together. I hope you're all having a lovely day today. Let's begin. So first things first, here's the first one. All right. Find the perfect, but not perfect because that's not the right word. Flatmate, right? You've got one of your roommates has recently moved out and you need to find a new roommate, right? So people living in a house, now sociable, outgoing at a university, no smoking, the rent is 300, the house is about 10 minutes from the university. You've got some perhaps options here. And then it says, do you know anyone who's looking for a place to live? Your roommate just moved out and now you need to find a new roommate. Ask other students in the class if they know anyone who needs a place to live, and then make sure potential roommates are compatible. So write your concerns in the table below. Okay, so the level A2 plus, B1 plus. Yes, that's right. Yes, find the perfect flatmate. Right. For me, right, I wouldn't say that this is just one level. Saying B1 is correct, for sure. But I'd never say it's only good for one level. The beauty about task-based learning is that it's B1 plus, going all the way up to C1, right? Maybe even C2. It doesn't really matter the level because anyone can approach this task. I wouldn't really necessarily give it to A1 students. It can be quite a challenge. There's already a lot of language in this task, which can be quite challenging, such as compatible, sociable, allergic, and slob, right? Which is in number 3. So it could be, yes, exactly. It's not A1. However, the idea is that it's B1, B2, C1, and even C2. The idea is that it isn't much about the task, itself. It's how the students approach the task, the language that they use, and you facilitating being a monitor, monitoring the language that they use, and then helping them upgrade that language, right? What type of language do you think students will need to do this task well? Come on, right? Personality adjectives. Oh, lovely, fantastic. Yes, yeah, he's interesting, he's boring, he's a wet blanket, right? Mm-hmm. Age is not necessary. However, because it is a flat or renting flat, perhaps this might be towards older students, perhaps from 15 upwards, right? Question forms, right? Yes. Could you tell me if they are quite sociable? Do they like parties? Functional language, speculation. Perhaps, yes, because it is a potential flatmate, yeah, they might be quite fun to live with. Descriptive language, especially. That's right, Eli. We're using language that we're describing the person's character, the person's flaws, and because you might want to make a choice. Yes, first conditionals, right? I might even know about second conditionals because remember, you might need to talk to other people. Um, if I choose him, um, would he make sure his room is clean every day? Right? Expressive. Business simple. Oh, wonderful. Habits and routines. That's right. So A2, B1, giving of routines, it might be a really good idea. You could simplify this task based on your learners, right? Hobbies, wonderful. But you also must remember it's also about concerns. So potential issues. Why limit conditionals? There's no reason to limit conditionals. However, you might want to limit the conditionals on the learners themselves. We don't really want to limit what the students bring to us. If they bring a second conditional and we think that that's amazing expression, we want to put it up on the board and might say, well, this sentence is a mistake. This is a simple sentence. We might want to upgrade it. But third, this sentence is really good, really wonderful. I think that this is fantastic and giving a boost morale to the students who are doing well in class. Welcome back, Iram. Right? And how could you, so we've got habits, we've got conditionals, we've got um, uh, personality adjectives. How could you practice, say, personality adjectives? What are some ways that we can practice this language? We could have a role model, drama school. Flashcards, it's always really nice. Yes, you can write some flashcards, put them up. You maybe can use flashcards on the screen, right? Describe and retrieve the word, yes, right? They can use that language to describe family and friends, wonderful. Posters are lovely, like, here we got neat and tidy and mark the slob, and then get them to write down why this is neat and tidy and why Mark is a slob, right? Oh, we can ask them about personal experiences. And real life examples. What about someone who um, you know rents a room? Or do you know someone who is looking for a person to rent a room? So describing your boss. I mean, it depends on where you have your English language classes. I've taught a lot of business language, and I wouldn't do that. All right. I think we should do another one. Let's do another one, shall we? Okay. Here we go. Famous person interview. Wonderful. famous in the band, you're a rock star, you've got like four people in the rock band. One person's the lead singer, one person's the drummer, one person's the bass, the other guy's the lead guitarist. Fantastic. And then the other person is you're a journalist, right? And you need to interview this world famous band for MTV. Well, MTV. Oh God, how old is this task? MTV. Right? And you've got quite a bit of things to do, right? Right? And so you've got some time to prepare. You've listened to your teacher give a little bit of he made a recording with him and his peers, and he's played the recording now, and it's your turn to prepare. So what level? B1, B1, B2, B1? Yes, that's right. Yes, from A to C. That's I think is it Begayam? Begayam is hit the nail on the head here. It really does come down to how we bring it to our students. We can slightly edit the task to make it a bit easier or more difficult or more challenging. But at the end of the day, it's task-based learning. We enjoy the fact that it is mixed ability classes or any ability classes. It's about the language that they bring and how we can feed back on it. I took, so what types of language will the students need to do to the task? Right? Back again to questions, different types of questions. So, for A levels, it might be object questions, subject questions. Yes. You're not allowed to say present perfect because someone in chat doesn't like present perfect. Words, yes. Likes and dislikes. Oh, yes, wonderful, right? Oh, yes, functional language, such as, excuse me, could I ask you a few questions? I was just wondering if you could answer a few questions. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think so too. Um, we've got there, if you can see this, future plans. So maybe future plans, what you'd like to do. So it could be like plans, future plans, will for decisions at the time of speaking, or going to for intentions, or present continuous for finished plans or arrangements. Yeah, it's you know absolutely. And giving short answers. Well, maybe even expanding on their answers, or maybe the interviewer asks follow-up questions. Yeah, that was interesting. Why did you say that? Or what do you mean? Could you give us more information? Absolutely. Right. I think a great way to practice this language, for me personally, is to redo the role play one more time. So you've been giving them feedback, you've upgraded their language, you focused on their emergent language, and now they just do it again. Oh my goodness, slang for like a cool British band, that's great. I only know swear words when it comes to British slang, but you know, yes, that's right. You might also want to change roles as well. You know, oh, storytelling. Yes, instead of doing the task again, you can get to give another report or tell a story about the tasks that they did. Absolutely brilliant. I got a lot of these tasks from this book, right? Which is called Ideas in Action, right? Activities for Task-Based Learning, right? By Neil Anderson and Neil McCutcheon. And in the back of the book, they've got all these tasks that I've been showing you today, right? So There's a lot of activities in this book. I've shown you two, but at the end of the day, some of the tasks that you see in your course books, you can bring them up. Yes, of course, I'm going to type it. Yes. That's what I was supposed to. Yeah. Ideas in action, activities for task-based learning. Yeah. Perfect. Let me copy that. And it's not necessarily from these books, but it's also about the activities in your books. Maybe you don't need to follow that exercise A, exercise B, exercise C, and then finally you get to the big exercise. Maybe take that exercise out of the book, give a little model of how you would do it, and then getting them to do it to find out the language, right? Some teachers, you might be able to come to a class and preemptively know what language they're going to use to do that task. So you can still plan to bring language to class, right? It's just that it's in a way that is more natural. We are coming to the students as people who are offering them help with their language. Thank you so much. Right. I'd love to answer any questions you have in the chat box for the next 5 minutes or so. So go ahead, ask any questions you'd like. It's been lots of fun. I will send the link to Teacher Zone to perhaps add it. The two tasks. Yes. Any questions in the chat box? Anyone? Who's the author of the book? Sorry, yes, I can definitely do that. Uh-huh. Neil. Neil. Oh, yeah. Please tell us about the two Zoom tasks. I will share those tasks with Teacher Zone, and hopefully they can get those and put them onto that website and as perhaps a link that they can download. All right, I'm very happy to share. I don't have the tasks on them right here. Oh, can you please go back to slide just to see it? Okay, yeah, sure. Oh, there we are. No problem. South Africa. How's it going, my friend? How's it? Yeah, it's a kind of a difficult day today. Hey, it's a Thursday. Yes, and did you know that it's my birthday tomorrow? I'm turning 40 tomorrow. Goodness gracious. Ah. Right. Wow. Oh, thank you so much for the happy birthdays. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be great. I can't wait. Yeah. Oh, wonderful stuff, everyone. Oh, let me go here. Open this. More Q&A. Okay. How can we, oh yes, here we are. Fundamental articles to reveal teachers. Thanks for joining. Yes, how we can bring. I think I've talked a little bit about Eli's question about pre-selected language. Yes, if you know the type of task that the students are going to do, such as making a plan or making an arrangement or asking interview questions, sometimes you can preempt the type of language by choosing the right task and then segueing into the language that you've brought for them. Yes? Brilliant. Thank you so much. All right. Uh, have it all the best. Stay safe. God bless. Oh, thanks so much. You guys have been a wonderful, wonderful group of students today, and it's lovely to join. I any more questions? One or two more questions? Thanks, Ela, for the question, man. Brilliant. Okay. Yes, that's right. Yes, I think you will all be given like a little email after the task with a few questions for you to answer about my webinar. Uh, Good, good. Thanks, Emil. Segue. I love it. Yeah, it's a great word. Right. I was going to say shoehorn, but then I was like, not the best word. I teach an online classroom, and task-based learning doesn't work. They all tend to sleep. It's a really good question because everyone is online in different areas. It's very difficult to do group work on Zoom unless you're using breakout rooms. And we all know the difficulty of breakout rooms, especially. You don't know if they're doing the task. You really want to be there with the students. So the first thing about task-based learning on Zoom is make sure you don't ever use breakout rooms. Everyone's in the class together. You've messaged the roles or the task up on the screen. The students know what they're doing. And then you do full classroom activities. Maybe everyone has a role, everyone has a part to the task. Or you can break it into two groups. One group has to wait while the other group does the task, and then they swap to the next group who can do the task together, such as the interviews. And then they've got some time to make notes individually about for the report. What strategies can students use if they lack the vocabulary or grammar needed for the task? Um, but that's the beauty of task-based learning. I know that they're missing language, and I could see where there's communication breakdown, and that is where you can offer them the language to do the task in a more appropriately, better, more fluently. Could you please make sure you stop the recording when you finish? Oh, yes, of course I will. I just love asking. Oh, segue means to move from one topic to another topic that you really want to teach instead of something else. For example, I'm talking about task-based learning and I want to talk about my birthday. So I say like, well, language learning is important. You get students to come together. I love it when people come together, like at a birthday party. So segue. Right, the master of segues. All right, guys, I do need to get going. Thank you so much. Oh, I know. Yeah, don't look 40. Yeah, I'm going to shave off. Okay. Have a lovely day, everyone. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for the questions. Let's finish up. We'll stop there and we'll bring it to a close. Have a lovely day.